Okay, and we should be recording. I'm Megan Fote. I am the department head for youth services over at Cooper-Siegel Community Library. And I am very pleased to welcome Leslie Bonci here for talking all about nutrition and children and teens, which I feel like is something that parents and caregivers, when you get us all together, we really like to talk about. And we always really value having a nutritionist who's available to tell us some extra information about the best way to feed our kids.
Well, Megan, thank you so much for having me. And I would agree, this is always a topic of conversation, whether we have young kids, whether we are now taking care of grandchildren or whatever the case might be. It's always a challenge. And I am truly a believer in not having the war zone around the dinner tables, and we really don't need to be doing that. And these past 14 months or however many months it's been at this point have really created some additional challenges on top of that, of people being home more and the refrigerator door saying, really, again? And, confounded with a lot of people now are needing to be much more mindful of affordability when it comes to food. And, this is, we can still be nourished well without having to spend a fortune, the shelf stability, the monotony, like all those things, so we can talk about them all.
Fantastic. To start with, can you share some of the main talking points, the main things that we should know about the new nutrition guidelines that have come out?
Yes, so the dietary guidelines for Americans, which do come out every 5 years, so they were just released in March of this year. And what is new about them this year is they've actually incorporated birth to 24, which was never a component of them before. And what's really very interesting is kind of this idea of starting at 6 months, not earlier than that, but starting at 6 months with the inclusion of protein, with the inclusion of fruits and vegetables, introducing those in earlier on, with the inclusion of grains and healthy fats being omega-6 and omega-3 fats. And also, after the age of 6 months, is starting to incorporate dairy in, full fat only. But this is really a positive. So it's not that we want little ones to have exactly the same portions, right, as what adults do, but to really broaden their palate and to introduce things in kid-sized amount, cut finely, that because they're still discovering the whole way to feed themselves and chew and the reflux and all those types of things. So the other thing that's new is that because we have this increased interest, exponential interest in plant-based right now. Plant-based is what people want to do, which is fantastic. However, what I think a lot of times people forget is that you actually can have an eating plan that is plant inclusive. It doesn't have to be exclusively plants. So there could still be room on the plate for other foods if you so choose. If somebody chooses not to do that, then we want to make sure that we have equivalent. And that's especially true when it comes to what's in the whole dairy case with things that aren't dairy and all these other things. So yes, there's almond, right? And there's quinoa, and there's rice milk, and there's hemp milk, and the list is endless. But when you look nutritionally for formative years, for a little one, if you're not going to do dairy, it's got to be a fortified soy beverage, because that's the only one that provides a very comparable nutritional profile. I've got a lot of parents, a lot of patients say, oh, we're using all these other milks and they're the same. They're not the same. And we really want to hit it right for little ones, so to give them every opportunity to grow well.
Awesome. I'm really glad that it's also including the older ages too, because I feel like sometimes first of all, they get a lot more choice and they get a lot more kind of self-agency, but it's also just really hard to figure out how to feed teenagers once they suddenly become these bottomless pits that eat everything.
Right. And do you have to spend a fortune? No, absolutely not. And that's why I'm really a very big believer in this wealth on the shelf, so to speak. So what do you already have around that can be the basis for meals that can be quite affordable? So for instance, mac and cheese, everything. That's something everybody really loves to have. And it's also easy. A teen can do this. A 6-year-old could actually make mac and cheese. So, how can we take that and make that better? So if we take that box mac and cheese, and maybe if somebody says, oh, I've got evaporated milk. Okay, we don't always have fluid milk. That's a great option. What I like to do as my X factor for a mac and cheese is to puree cannellini beans, because that adds some creaminess to it. It's actually adding a vegetable, but it doesn't change the taste. And what you could do is, is put a little bit more Parmesan in there to bring some other flavor. And now you have something that is universally acceptable. There's not going to be any uck factor there. And it's really very, very easy, and it's inexpensive to do something like that. So that's a good one. I think another one, we look at what's popular out there, Chipotle, right? Yeah, but that's not that inexpensive to go and get it. Could we do the same thing at home? Of course. If we have salad, if we have rice, inexpensive item, if we have some beans, one of the things for that, who cares if the chicken breast is gorgeous? You're going to mix it with all the other stuff. You buy frozen shredded chicken. It's a lot less expensive to buy it that way. You put a little salsa on there and you have exactly the same thing. And everybody then can customize their bowl. I want this. I don't want this. And then there's no fights. Everybody's getting what they want, and it's fun because it's like a layered food to eat.
I love that. What are some of your other favorite ways to really make your money stretch when you're out grocery shopping and trying to also give nutritious options?
Well, one of the things that sometimes people do is, oh, I'm going to buy a lot because it's on sale. You know what? That doesn't really work if you end up throwing it away, because that's nourishing the garbage disposal or the garbage can and not you. So I wouldn't do that. I would also, when people say, you're just supposed to shop the perimeter of the store. What does that mean? Outside? Maybe you're getting some exercise, but no, I don't think so. So when you're in the aisles, that's oftentimes where the bargains are. Those foods that are shelf stable means they'll last for longer. You don't have to throw them away. So yes, the cereals, yes, the beans, yes, the rice, yes, the pasta, even canned fruits and vegetables. I use canned tomatoes pretty much most of the year, unless the summertime, because who wants a mushy, mealy tomato? It's like, yuck, why bother doing those types of things? Those work really, really well. And I would say as well, don't buy more than you're going to use. It doesn't make sense to do that. If you are buying something because it's on sale, if you're not going to use it, freeze it so that you have it available. I also think things like frozen veggies, why? You can pull out what you need. You don't have to waste the time chopping them. You put them back in the freezer. There they are. So lots of bargain to be had. And the last thing I would say is that although a lot of time people want to buy brand name, and that's fine, but realize nutritionally, it's no different. So you don't always have to do that. And you are not compromising at all nutritional value. And you're probably saving some money on the back end too.
Fabulous. You mentioned really early on not being somebody who promotes having the battles over eating meals. I think that there are very few of us who look forward to any battles surrounding mealtime. What have you found that really works to eliminate that struggle and that difference of opinion about what we want kids to eat and what they are interested in eating?
Right. And so first of all, I think everybody just kind of needs to take a deep breath, like a little downward dog. It's like, okay, all right, we're going to settle down right now, because we are not in our children's stomachs. We don't know how hungry they are. We don't know how full they are. We can't know that. And so we're imposing what we want as adults on our kids. No, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Secondly, we know that some kids are super tasters. So for certain foods, it's really a very pronounced taste. So it's not necessarily that they're just trying to make you crazy by not eating broccoli. Indeed, sometimes it is that it tastes so bitter to them that is incredibly unappealing, and that's why they're not going to have it. I think it's also critically important to realize that for kids, it isn't just about the food. All right. They're not thinking, oh, that was the best mac and cheese I ever had. No, it's like, can I hurry up and eat this to go and do whatever I'm going to do? We have 3 grandchildren, and one eats pretty well most of the time. That's the littlest one. Yeah. Our older grandson, sometimes it depends, because usually I want to play with trucks, so that's more important. So we got little construction vehicle forks and things that help. And then our granddaughter is like, no, she doesn't really care. She's growing, she's thriving, but to expect that she's going to sit down and eat a meal, Not going to happen. So we can change our expectations and take that off our list of worry. Kids innately know what it is that they need, and they're, for the most part, going to be grazers. They're going to have a little bit at a time. So don't put out that whole amount of food, because chances are you're going to end up throwing it, or you're going to eat it because it's sitting there and somebody should eat it. Is just put out a little bit. So it's kind of like the tapas approach versus the entree approach. It usually tends to go over well. I know that there are some parents that like to make smiley faces with their food. I think it's great. No, I don't really want to do that. It's like a frowny face for me. But I think it has to be familiar. If we make it fun, if we make it not only just child size in terms of the serving, but in terms of the size of the pieces. I mean, if you give a 3-year-old a whole apple, what are they going to do with that? Probably nothing. My professional athletes don't want to eat a whole apple. They want somebody to cut it up for them. So, it's cut small, and maybe it's with a little dip, and all of a sudden that becomes actionable and more fun, and maybe even game kind of a thing. Let's count the number of peas, or let's do this, so that we're bringing something into the mix besides just, you can't get up from the table until you eat those peas. We know that that's not going to work anytime. It just doesn't.
That's it's definitely what I found as a mom, is that we do a lot of we have a backup, which is like a hot dog and a vegetable and a fruit. And if he wants to try what we're having for dinner, that's great. And we'll give him something to try. And if he doesn't, then it doesn't take me long to microwave a hot dog, and he's still getting what he needs to get. So that's very much what I've been doing.
And I think that it also is the expectations that we have as parents. You didn't ask him to eat 100% of that food that maybe he just doesn't want to eat, but a bite. And certainly if we have kids with allergies, I mean, this is an entirely different thing. We're not going to make kids eat things that would be medically a problem. But to say it's one bite, but it's that one bite surrounded by other familiar things, then that also makes it much, much more comfortable, and not thinking about it as punishment, because kids will view it that way if they have to do something, or, okay, well, then you can have the cookie as the reward. It's like, what? No, we just don't need to do that. We just don't.
What are some other questions that you feel like you get asked a lot?
Some of them are really, I think, unfortunately, the misinformation that is so pervasive that, people are finding online or from influencers. Influencers are great at having lots of followers, not so wonderful when it comes to expertise. I mean, they're not. We all eat, but that doesn't make us all experts in this field. So, it really is about the food bullying types of things. So, okay, we shouldn't have dairy. Allergic to it, obviously not. Intolerant to it, there's options out there. But as I mentioned, because they don't all match up equivalently, we don't want to be doing anything that could shortchange our kids nutritionally or ourselves in any way, shape, or form. Gluten is another one, and gluten is the protein found in wheat, rye, barley, and oats. And I work with people that have celiac disease. That's how you manage it. You don't consume gluten. But otherwise, is to say gluten is causing autism, and gluten is doing this, and leaky gut, and this, that, and the other. No, it's not. Gluten is protein. Gluten-containing foods have fiber. Gluten-containing foods have vitamins and minerals that are essential. So if we cut them out, we still have to replace it with something, right? And some of the gluten-free foods, well, nutritionally, they don't stack up. Price-wise, they're through the roof. And taste-wise, they leave a lot to be desired. So that's not necessarily a better option. There was a study that was done actually early in 2009. And what they did is they took a group of healthy individuals, healthy guts, for a month, and they fed them a gluten-free diet. And what they found at the end of the month is an increase in the amount of bad bacteria in the gut, a decrease in the amount of good bacteria in the gut, which had an impact on immune system in a negative way. Those are the unintended consequences that we don't want to see. Third thing is even this issue of, well, should I buy organic? So we really think about that. There's a lot of health halo around it. Oh, at Halloween, I bought organic candy. Why? That's really not any different than anything else. It costs more, but it's not better nutritionally. So when we think about organic, this has to do with the farming method, but there's still a lot of misinformation about that. Yes, when things are grown by organic agriculture, there are pesticides used. There are different ones, but they're used. Typically, the price point is higher because the yield is not as high when you do organic farming, but nutritionally, they're equivalent to conventionally grown. And at the end of the day, in this country right now, both kids and adults, 1 in 10 is consuming enough fruits and vegetables every day. So if we add more obstacles, oh, well, I have to do organic, but I can't afford it, so therefore I won't have it. That doesn't move the needle in the right direction. We have this yearly list that comes out, the hit list, right, of the Environmental Working Group. This is not based upon science. And literally, strawberries made that list this year of bad. So, I mean, I don't know about you, I like strawberries, but how many strawberries would I have to eat for this to be a problem? Probably 125 every day. I like them, but I'm not going to eat that many because I don't have enough room in my stomach to do so. So, it's fear mongering that is absolutely not necessary when we look at helping people to be as healthy as they can. And the one other one I think is the issue of sugar that we're hearing a lot of. So, I've done cooking camps for kids, which I adore doing that. And we do tasting, and what definitely is the flavor number one of it? Sweet, because we all like that taste of sweet. So we have to divide this out, and we're talking about sugar that's in something naturally, right? So fruit, vegetables have sugar in them. You can't get it out, it's there. Dairy has lactose in it, that's the sugar. Grain has maltose, that's the sugar. So the concern is not that. The concern is more about added sugar and how much. So, honestly, is a fruit snack the same as a raisin? No, it's not. Is a Skittle the same as having like a fruit cup? No, it's not. And it's primarily because of the added sugar. That doesn't mean none, but it means being careful about that. And that's also why I think from an early age, as we look at really introducing all the taste. So it's salt, and it's sour, and it's even bitter to a certain extent, what the vegetables are, and it's umami, and that all those things together can be really creative ways of getting comfortable with having a little less sugar, not none, but a little bit less, because we've explored other things. So it's not a takeaway, it's an add-in, and it's that discovery zone around our palate, which we really want to be doing.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit more about the number of fruits and veggies that we are supposed to have? Because I feel like that's probably true that none of us are eating.
Yeah, and certainly this concept of 5 a day has been around for a long time. Other countries do that well and actually do more than that. And depending upon what somebody's trying to accomplish, for instance, DASH diet recommendation to help to lower blood pressure, it's 7 to 9. So, I mean, that's a lot, but we think that, oh, that's so much. Well, so let's talk about the serving size. So we're talking about a piece of fruit that is the size of a tennis ball, not a football. So that's a relatively small amount of something. And that could be a little applesauce, right? That's that size. Or that could be because I put some berries in a smoothie. And the beauty of pulling out that blender is you can probably get 3 or 4 in one glass, right? So, okay, I did a half of a banana, there's 1. I added a half a cup of strawberry, there's 2. I added a little handful of spinach, maybe I don't want to eat it, but when I throw it in there, who cares? I added in a little avocado, there's 4 right there in that glass. People forget about the fact that a spaghetti sauce, a marinara sauce, salsa, vegetable. I always try and find ways creatively to get vegetables into my athlete because, basically they're 3-year-olds in big bodies. It's the same thing. So, we do like a bean dip. It's black beans, canned black beans, drained in the blender, and I'll throw in salsa and plain Greek yogurt and a little taco seasoning. That's it. So 2 vegetables that are there, plus the dairy. And then as the dipper, sometimes people wouldn't necessarily gravitate toward eating a piece of celery, but okay, that's the vehicle for the dip. All right. Or with a hummus, it's the same type of a thing. Or, there actually are freeze-dried vegetables that are available as a chip. So it's not oily ones. It's just the vegetable, like beets do that. There's kale, there's beet, there's carrots. and they're crunchy and it kind of tastes like a chip. It's fun to do those types of things. The other thing is even thinking about when people want snacky stuff, like the roasted chickpeas and roasted favas that are out and available and crunchy. So it feels like a snack, even throwing some of those in popcorn. Hey, you just added a vegetable to your popcorn. No brainer. And the freeze-dried vegetables. So instead of croutons, now we have routons, and we're putting those or croutons right there into our salad to provide some crunch and fun. And it takes no effort. And those are shelf stable. So it's not like, oh, I bought the apple and it got nasty and then I had to throw it away.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What about cooking with children? Do you have some favorite ways to do that?
Well, I think the earlier that we can get kids involved in the kitchen, the better, because they learn that appreciation for it. The studies that have shown that kids that are involved in any aspect of cooking, from something as simple as standing on a little stool and stirring something if we don't want them handling a knife, to maybe something a little bit more involved, like helping to take something out of the oven or put it into the oven, actually feel satisfied with less food than hands off. If you're not involved at all, that can be a problem. So, I love that idea. If it is, okay, you can cook along with me, we're going to do it together, we're going to stir together, we're going to make popsicles together. How simple is that? And then put them into the freezer and we take it out and you get to eat it and we eat it together. I when we do the cooking classes, even the idea of tasting stations and having a chance to try a little bit of something. So when you're engaged in that process, you're probably going to be more likely to try. For those people that do gardens, one of the best thing is, hey, I planted the plants with mom and or dad, and wow, now I could actually taste this. One of our little men, they grow raspberries, and this is just awesome to him to be able to pluck them right off the bush because he was out there helping mom doing the weeding and those types of things. So it's just another opportunity for engagement. It's not just a screen engagement or go do something else. Let's get our kids involved. Why should we as parents have to do all the work? And we don't. Really, this is survival skills. I mean, I was always very proud of the fact that when our sons went to school, I knew that they would know how to cook. If they needed to do that, they weren't going to starve. They actually had those fundamentals that we should not be able to graduate high school without anymore. I am serious.
Yeah, no, I'm very grateful for my home ec class.
Yeah,
it was, I mean, I certainly had done some cooking with my mom before that, but it was really useful to just have somebody go over the basics of how you would read a recipe and how you would do the cooking. And I do a lot of cooking with my 7-year-old, and he really loves it. And we get a whole lot of math into it as well, because I don't know how many times you need to go over, how a third of a cup works and how a fourth of a cup works, but it's a really confusing concept and he's still learning it. And so it's really useful to have that reinforced with a recipe, which is something that he's excited to.
Well, truly, if we think about curriculum, is food and nutrition and cooking really fit into everything. So, it is English, it's learning how to read a recipe. It's the math, it's doing the measuring. And when it comes to baking, that's far more important because you've got to get it right for the chemical reaction. It is the cultural aspect of food that is so vitally important, that we learn the story of the different types of foods we eat and the diversity around the world. And history is part of that, and language is part of that. And it's gym as well, because food doesn't make itself. Somebody has to do something. So it's stirring, or it's, hey, let's do a few jumping jacks while the muffins are cooking, or whatever the case is. You can get a whole workout in the kitchen.
Absolutely. I wanted to touch a little bit on allergies, and if you had some suggestions for what to look out for to give you an idea that you have a child with a food sensitivity or a child that something else is going on with their not wanting to eat something.
Yeah, and so first of all, it is absolutely critically important that as parents we keep an eye on what going on, and we make sure that we are not using Dr. Google as our source of information, that you have to contact an allergist. If you need to do that, you do that. A lot of the studies right now are really looking for early onset eczema, and really now suggesting that for kids that do, that is actually the time that you start to introduce, and particularly it's peanuts. It's fascinating. And what the studies are showing is in that early introduction, not whole peanuts, kids are going to choke. It's a little bit of a peanut powder, like the Bomba snack, a little bit of that, or a tiny bit of peanut butter, that you may be able to prevent that allergy to peanuts later on. So that, I think, is absolutely fascinating that we're hearing. But, keeping an eye on, what's happening skin-wise, or certainly if we're any respiratory types of things would be a cause for concern. Even GI issues, but GI issues could also be an intolerance more than they're going to be anything else. And realizing that it just doesn't make a lot of sense, even if it's, oh, and I'm feeding my baby and my baby's growing so fast, and so I'm going to start introducing the food at 4 months. No, it's 6 months is really what we want to be doing, because the gut has to develop enough to be able to handle the proteins within the food. So our babies aren't going to starve if we hold off and giving them food until 6 months. It's just a lot safer to do it that way. And actually, one of my favorite resources for really young kids is Airplane Choo Choo. It's fantastic. I mean, it is so detailed, and it kind of goes from 0 to 6 months, and then 6 to 8 months, and 8 to 12, and 12 to 24, every type of food and the quantity of food. You can find that online. Airplane Choo Choo is really a great one. And, and I think also as parents is, we got to trust our gut. I mean, if we think something is off, then it's worth it. And in some cases, it's not an allergy, but indeed it might be a textural issue, or it might be a swallowing issue, or things a little bit more like an EOE, eosinophilic esophagitis, where there definitely are some inability to tolerate foods and a lot of GI issues and those types of things, but never ever with a self-diagnosis. We don't want to do that. It's not worth it to take a chance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think those were the bulk of the questions that I can think of. Do you have other things that you were hoping to share during this recording? Well,
just one of the things that I always say is, when we really think about food and what are the major important things about food? I mean, it's nourishing our body. It's energy. We can't do it in any other way. Caffeine's nice, but it doesn't do the same thing. That it really is about bringing people together. I mean, that's what it is. And, and the way of doing that is without strife, and really is with enjoyment. And it also is, and even as evidence this year in the dietary guidelines and National Nutrition Month, of this need to personalize the plate. So we might have, as a family, we're all sitting around the table, but number one, our plates may not be the same size. Our serving sizes are not going to be the same size, and it's what we choose. Do we want something a little more spicy? Or we want a little more crunchy? Do we want it more hot? Do we want it more cold? So one size fits all is not the name of the game. That doesn't mean as parents we have to be short order cooks. It's not about that, but it does mean that we really want to find where is that common ground? What is it? And that's why I love the idea of kind of DIY, right? So it's okay. Here's some baked potatoes. Everybody put on it what you want. Pizza. And it's an incredibly easy one. If we need to be gluten-free, all right. I'm not a cauliflower crust fan myself, and I like it. But everybody can put what they want on it. That doesn't take a lot of time. And now everybody is engaged. And if we have what we like, chances are we're probably going to do a better job of eating it.
Thank you so much. This was really fun. I am glad that we got to chat, and I hope that everyone who gets a chance to watch it gets some new ideas. I know I have some new ideas, things that I want to try out.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Can people contact you if they have questions? Is there a good way to reach out?
Yes. So my website is activeeatingadvice.com, and my email is my last name, Bonci, BONCILJ1 @gmail.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Thank you for having me.
Very glad to have you. feel like this is the number one thing that parents ask when we ask what type of programming they are looking for. What at the very top is getting to hear from a nutritionist.
Yeah, because it's frustrating. I mean, it just is, and it can just be such an energy suck. I mean, really, it can. It reduces people to tears, and not just the little one.
Yeah, I know everybody. Absolutely. I think you've definitely done some things and given some advice that is going to reduce those tears. So thank you so much.
Oh,
I think we're going to have more smiles at the dinner table, which is fabulous.
Yay, we want that. All right.